I'm on a mission to explain the story of all quests in RuneScape. You know, the ones that you've pressed the spacebar through. Meet MedioLore. This adventurer will seek his fame and fortune by doing any and all quests that NPCs in RuneScape throw at him. And I mean anything. The secret twist is that he has a main account that is not locked to any region or subjected to any restrictions. This is MedioLore. It seems fitting to start this channel off with the first ever designed quest for RuneScape. So today we'll be looking at the Cook's Assistant quest. We can start this journey at the same place every player starts their adventure. Lumbridge Castle. The stone of this great structure towers over all newcomers, and its great size actually reflects the sound of the great Goblin genocide that is permanently being perpetrated just over the river. In the kitchen, things aren't what they seem though. The expected smell of food being prepared isn't there. Medio decides to have a chat with the cook. From conversing with him, we can learn that his fashionscape is actually standard chef's attire, yet this outfit is unobtainable in-game. So if you subscribe right now, I will use my platform solely to champion this outfit being added to RuneScape. Further investigation leads us to learning of the predicament the cook is facing. It's the Duke's birthday, but the cook forgot to get the ingredients for a cake. He asks us if we could come in clutch and get them for him. For that, we'll need the following 3 items: a raw egg, a bucket of milk, and a pot of flour. The first ingredient was simple. Medio reasoned that eggs come from chickens. For the pot of flour, he had a peaceful walk to the mill, where he was allowed to pick all the wheat he could because by the grace of God, it would regrow within a few ticks. Processing the wheat into the mill awarded Medio with a pot of flour. The last piece of the puzzle was getting a bucket full of milk. It was hard work, but it seemed the chore was almost done, until Medio was rudely interrupted.
You've never milked a cow before, have you?
No. How could you tell?
Because we only have a pool.
Oh god. With his egg, flour and milk, Medio trekked back to Lumbridge Castle, saving the cook from his plight. He is awarded with some cooking lessons for his efforts, which only gets him to level 4. This makes sense, however, if you look at the cook's official cookbook. It seems that the story ends here, but the cook states that the cake was for the Duke's birthday. But I tried to do this quest on different days and the reason stays the same. A person can only have one birthday per year. This gives me reason to believe that there's something more going on than the cook lets on. Which is true, but I'm not a member yet. Shearer is a free-to-play quest that can be started by speaking to Fred the farmer. Fred is a hunted individual who, after living his entire life in the countryside, has become prone to believing in conspiracy theories. But that's not all that's off about him. When asking for a quest, he'll give you slave labor disguised as one. Your assignment is to shear the sheep in Farmer Fred's pen and spinning their wool into balls. He warns the player to watch out for the thing, but no one knows what that looks like. To actually shear sheep, you'll need shears. So Medio sets out to retrieve a pair from the nearest general store. Hello good sir, I'd like a set of your finest shears, please. Those are 50 coins. Medio uses his honestly sourced shears to start cutting, at some point putting his shears in the thing, which is actually just 2 penguins in disguise. This story just might continue as soon as I persuade my mom into finally buying me membership. After spinning 20 balls of wool, Farmer Fred gives you 60 coins, totaling 3 coins per ball. The joke is that the market value of this item has never gone below 25 each. And just like that, Fred the farmer made a hefty profit over our labor. Just like those capitalistic grifters back in the day who recruited 10-year-olds in the cowpens, promising them coins for their cow hides while severely underpaying them. I know this because I fell victim to this. This leads me to my conclusion. Shearer is actually social commentary that criticizes late-stage capitalism. If an an old hag from the shady part of town asked you if you wanted a potion that enabled you to embrace the dark arts, you'd immediately say yes, right? That's basically the plot of Witch's Potion. Hetty is a witch that lives in Remington, worried that someday soon, the witch hunters of Falador will come round and teach her a lesson. This is the first and only time that this faction is mentioned. Not even the wiki has information on them. I love finding these obscure little nuggets of lore, because if you're the first one to find it, you get to write about it. That's where I feel at home. In high school, I was even voted misinformation. As long as Hetty's kneecaps are intact, she'll offer us a potion that attunes us to our dark side. The catch is that we have to supply the ingredients ourselves. These are an eye of newt, an onion, burnt meat, and a rat still. The eye of newt was simple. Medio set out to a nearby rune shop. Hello, good woman, do you sell amphibian eyes? Sure, why not? The onion could be acquired from his former employer Fred the farmer, and because Medio learned to cook from the Lumbridge cook, burnt meat was not a problem. The biggest obstacle was the rat still, which is dropped from a level 1 rat, but at this point in time, Medio's combat level is 3, so this encounter felt more like this. Anyway, that's the end of Witch's Potion. You are awarded with 1 quest point and 325 magic experience. Another lore implication of this quest is that Hetty the Witch might have the thickest character model of any human in RuneScape. But I'll know that for sure when I complete this series, and if you want to be a part of that, you can subscribe right now, it's gonna be fun. Ernest the Chicken is a story of a crazy professor who turns another man into a chicken. It's up to the player to serve as the professor's reluctant assistant to undo what he's done. One day, Medio was out adventuring when he happened across a distressed woman named Veronica. She and her husband Ernest got lost, so the man, being the man, decided to enter this spooky ass manor to ask for directions. It's been a while, and Veronica is getting worried. It would put our mind at ease if we could find out what happened. Medio had no reservations regarding entering this clearly cursed building. He was now a white man in a horror setting after all. When Medio reached the upstairs area, he found Professor Odenstein. Curiosity got the better of him, and Medio asked if this was his manor. He's just renting the place from Count Draenor, the vampire from downstairs who serves as a landlord. From this, we can infer that Count Draenor is not only a blood-sucking egotistical monster, he is also a vampire. Returning to the task at hand, Medio asks about Ernest, where the professor tells Medio that he's helping him with his experiments. But unfortunately, he was turned into a chicken on accident. This happened after the professor used a polymorph machine on him.
That is amazingly funny.
When prompted to change him back, the professor declines because the machine is broken and we need to fix it. For that, 3 items are needed. We'll need a pressure gauge, a rubber tube, and an oil can. The pressure gauge is in a fountain on the manor grounds, but this fountain is infested with piranhas. The only way for us to get it is by poisoning the fish food, after which the gauge will be free for the taking. Now that we're outside, if we dig through the compost heap, we can actually find an old key. This opens the door where a skeleton is guarding the rubber tube. The last item needed is the oil can, and to get it, you'll need to do a very specific puzzle. I remember the very first time I did this quest. It must have been the summer of 05. A Texan by the name of Mikey2004 took the time to walk me through this part. Even though my 9-year-old brain could barely understand English, we managed to do it, largely due to Mikey's extreme patience. I still remember this random act of kindness 20 years later. So Mike, I hope you're still out there, and that you're winning in life. The reason I'm telling you this is that I think it's exactly these communal things that bring us together as humans. And I want this channel to do something similar, so if you subscribe right now, I promise I will use this platform solely to persuade Jagex into bringing the chef's outfit into the game. With the pressure gauge, the tube and the oil can, Medio returns to Professor Odenstein, who is nothing if not a man of his word. So Medio rescues Ernest and asks him for monetary compensation, which is the only shot he has at becoming a homeowner because evil fucks like Count Draenor keep artificially raising rent. And that's the end of Ernest the Chicken. You're awarded with 4 quest points and 300 coins. This is 30% of the asking price for your first house in RuneScape. proving once again that this is a fantasy game. Pirate's Treasure is a story about smuggling contraband, enabling an alcoholic pirate, and killing an innocent gardener in cold blood, all in the span of 10 minutes. This quest can be started by talking to Redbeard Frank. You'll know he's a pirate because you can get in an eternal back and forth with him that looks like this. He'll then tell Medio all about a secret treasure, but he'll only disclose the location if we give him a bottle of exotic Karamja rum. This tasty little treat can only be acquired on Karamja itself, and as Garnia has banned the import of spirits, much to the chagrin of the local pirates, and probably the reason why King Valens doesn't dare show his face anymore. We can circumvent this export restriction by traveling to the jungle island of Karamja, buying a bottle of rum, and becoming gainfully employed at Lutha's banana plantation. This banana operation has a running order with Wyden. Bananas that are exported from Karamja will end up in his food shop. Luthas himself is good people, so the custom officers that would normally search any and all travelers for contraband just let him pass, as he has earned his good name. We'll be here to take advantage of that. When loading a crate full of bananas, there is still space for a cheeky little bottle of Karamja rum. If we then job hop to work for Wyden, we can access a storage area in the back. It is here that we can stumble upon a bottle of contraband alcohol. It would be the first of many crimes Medio would commit over the course of his adventure. It was in Wyden's shop, however, that I noticed something out of the ordinary. You can ask Wyden for food recommendations, which will prompt him to bring up the exotic fruits of bananas. When stating that you don't like the sound of that, the talking head sprite actually breaks and stops moving. This is actually done on purpose, as Jagex wanted to indicate that if you reject anything that seems too exotic, your head doesn't work right, probably. Medio then bestows the rum upon Redbeard Frank. In exchange, he gives Medio a key that unlocks a chest in the Blue Moon Inn in Varrock. Frank never bothered to collect the treasure, as he is banned from this establishment on account of him being a problematic alcoholic. So Medio makes his way to Varrock once more and opens the chest. Rather than uncovering the treasure, he finds a clue that points him in the direction of Valador Park. When digging for the treasure chest, he angers a level 4 gardener for disrupting the sanctity of the local green spaces. Medio stabs him in a carotid artery. Growing up, I always thought our characters were the good guys in RuneScape, but this quest proves that the opposite is true, and it's only going to get worse from here. This smuggle/murder sequence awards us with 2 quest points and One-Eyed Hector's treasure chest, which includes a gold ring, an emerald, and 450 coins, so I guess it's worth the negative karma points. Romeo and Juliet is a quest based on the tragic play by Will.i.am Shakespeare, but the twist is that in this one, Romeo is special needs and Juliet has a foxy cousin, so this one's better. Romeo loves Juliet, but Juliet's father does not approve of their union.
What are your intentions with my daughter?
So to remedy this situation, Romeo asks the player for help and sends them to Juliet's mansion. But then Medio came across something disturbing. Dozens of bots endlessly filling their water supplies in the Varrock fountains. Why were they doing that? Where were they going? And what was that bald bearded lady's deal? Was she single? After regaining his focus, Medio makes his way to Juliet's mansion. Juliet implores him to deliver a message to her Romeo. And who are we to stand in the way of true love? So Romeo gets awarded this message and he is ecstatic, stating that he never gets any messages, except court summons. Juliet writes that she still loves Romeo, but her father is so opposed to their union that he will kill him on sight. This is the biggest hater we've encountered so far. At this point, an upset Romeo sends the player to Father Lawrence. If there's anyone who will know what to do, it's gonna be him. But surprise, surprise, the priest is creepy as hell, cause he's all like,
Yes, just give Juliet some Rufy-Ami cadaver berry poison and things will work out.
At which point, Medio is like, but he can't think of a better alternative, so the plan right now is simple. All Medio has to do is pick some cadaver berries, which he does in relative safety. As long as Medio supplies the cadaver berries, the local apothecary can do the rest. But the cadaver berry potion looked really tasty for some reason, and you can actually drink it. If you don't heed the warnings, this will happen. It's now time to bring the potion to Juliet. But before you do that, you can actually speak with her father. At which point, he'll notice the potion and you have to lie yourself out of the situation. You'll tell him it's a sleeping potion, and if you dare fall asleep in his house, he'll charge you rent. This is the second evil landlord we've met thus far. Bringing the potion to Juliet will result in her imbibing it. She'll fall in a coma, and her cousin Philippa, who is in on the plot, shows us firsthand that she's actually one of those theater kids. At which point, Juliet's father shows up and sees her lying on the balcony, so he's like,
"Give me rent."
we bring the good news to Romeo, and then we join him in the crypt because he's scared. As Romeo prepares to take Juliet away, he meets Philippa, and he's like, God damn, who is Juliet even? So Romeo leaves with Philippa and spends the rest of his life thinking Juliet died. When checking in on Juliet, it turns out that she spent a few hours waiting. Romeo never showed up though. All she got from this scheme was indigestion. You are awarded with 5 quest points and the knowledge that you should probably keep your children away from the Varrock priest. In RuneScape, dead people can turn into ghosts if they have unfinished business. And the Restless Ghost is a story about just such an individual.
My only regret is that I didn't fuck more Latinas.
This quest can be started in Lumbridge by talking to Father Eric. This priest of Saradomin, one of the gods of RuneScape, is an interesting individual. Not only because his name is by far the worst way to spell Eric, he can also be told that his entire life is a lie and that he lives in a computer game. He takes it as well as one might expect. But that's not the father's only problem. There's a ghost haunting his graveyard.
Ooh, thick Latinas.
Our only hope is to get help from Father Ernest. Who's naming these motherfuckers? This priest lives a reclusive life in the Lumbridge swamps, so Medio sets out to visit him. Here, he tries to repossess Ernie's house, since rent in the area was skyrocketing because of some sick fuck. Father Ernie is street smart though, and he doesn't fall for it. When Medio tells him about the plight of the Restless Ghost, Father Ernie gives him an amulet of ghost speak. As the name suggests, this amulet allows the wearer to communicate with ghosts. Now Medio could take his first steps into discovering why the Restless Ghost had not gone over to the other side. The ghost is overjoyed that someone finally can understand him.
Oh, you speak
Ghost.
No, just that first speech and this one explaining it.
You're kidding, right?
Ooh.
Later, Medio figures out that the Restless Ghost is still here because his skull has been stolen by warlocks. So Medio travels to the Wizard Tower to get it back. When searching the altar in the basement, he comes across the skull, but this inadvertently triggers a skeleton to attack him. And at this point in his journey, Medio is extremely outclassed, so he escapes into the forest and returns the skull to its rightful owner. This finally allows the Restless Ghost to pass over, and he crosses the river to presumably pursue Latinas. The player is awarded with 1 quest point and a modicum amount of prayer experience. And that's the end of the Restless Ghost. Rune Mysteries is a short quest that unlocks the skill that will speedrun the return of your depression. It was developed in response to the great rune shortage that plagued the lands of Gillinor from 2001 to 2004. This quest can be started by speaking with Duke Horatio of Lumbridge. He has come across a strange talisman and wants to know more. To this end, he sends Medio to Archmage Cedrador. He's a basement dweller in the Wizard's Tower. Not only that, this motherfucker thinks he's smug as hell, so he's all like,
Oh, and what would you want with this Cedrador?
And Medio tells the wizard that the Duke has asked Cedrador to examine the talisman he found.
Oh, you can just leave that with me.
In response, you can refuse to do so, saying you'll only give it to Cedrador. Only now will the mage reveal that he is in fact the man himself. As there was absolutely no need for this deception, a still skeptical Medio requires more proof. Upon which, the wizard reveals that he knows our full birth name. This does not prove anything about his archmage status, but it does prove that he's able to dox you. Medio, knowing full well to not mess with competent hackers, gives the talisman away. He then finds out that this talisman might just be the key to finding the lost essence mine. When magic is cast in RuneScape, runes are consumed to power the magic within the spell. These runes consist of rune essence. The actual element or effect from the rune will be dictated by which altar was used when it was crafted. This process is called rune crafting, and it's the leading cause of depression among RuneScape players. This discovery was done once before, in the era of the first wizard tower, where any and all mage was welcome, even the dark mages. This welcoming nature was to be its undoing, and Cedrador is like,
should have kept our goddamn border shut.
the dark mages followed Zamorak, the evil god of RuneScape. In the resulting mayhem, the tower was destroyed, and the incantation that could teleport people to the Essence Mine was lost to history. Rune supplies have been dwindling ever since, until perhaps now. Cedrador sends Medio to travel to Varrock, where he's supposed to seek out Aubrey, the local rune shop owner. It is there that Medio gives Aubrey an encrypted research package. Unenthused Aubrey then gives Medio a piece of paper that makes little sense to him, but it's of the utmost importance that this note is returned to Cedrador with haste. The contents of the note is actually the lost incantation to the Essence Mine, and with that, you've completed the Rune Mysteries quest. Completion of this quest grants access to the Rune Essence Mine, an Air Talisman, and saves Gillinor from a magicless existence. Most notably, it unlocks Runecraft as a skill. I'm still not gonna train it though. Have you ever wondered why imps in RuneScape always carry useless junk? Me neither, but in this video, I'll tell you anyway. The wizard Misgog can be forcefully persuaded into giving the player a quest. When this happens, it's revealed that him and the other wizard Greyzak are beefing like crazy. Greyzak, being the petty bitch he is, summoned hundreds of imps to steal stuff from wizard Misgog. His personal items included things like clay, balls of wool,
And cadaver berries.
We've established in the past that these berries can be used for nefarious means. What really grinds his gears is the disappearance of his 4 magical beads, so he tasks Medio with returning them. When getting Greyzak's side of the story, he taunts Medio with the statistical improbability of actually locating the beads. But this is stupid because you either get the drop or you don't. Never deterred, Medio set out to slay the evil imps that stole Misgog's beads. You'd be surprised how difficult this is on a new account in a free-to-play world, especially when they have a small chance to teleport away from their attackers if they're not killed directly. Unable to best the imps in single combat, Medio found help from a mysterious benefactor.
Hey kid, wanna buy some beads?
Are those the same magical beads that were stolen from Wizard Misgog?
Sure, why not?
Medio returns to the Wizard's Tower with the smelly beads in hand. Wizard Misgog, a skeptic at the best of times, casts a magic spell to check if the beads are actually his. For some reason, they are. This marks the end of Imp Catcher, which will net you 1 quest point, 875 magic experience and an amulet of accuracy. At this point in our adventure, this is one of the best amulets we can get. I've always wanted to say this, my friends, this amulet changes everything. In Doric's quest, the player helps a dwarf supply materials for his anvil. The quest itself is almost as short as he is. Doric is happy to let you use his anvils, as long as you can supply him with 6 units of clay, 4 copper ores and 2 pieces of iron. Like most normal people, Medio too yearns for the mines. And he got to work. It was in Remington that he noticed something strange. A handful of players were competing for the same copper rock. No one would talk to him though. This was the case in every free world, a handful of mute bots all trying to mine the same piece of rock. This led Medio to one sound conclusion: the free-to-play experience in RuneScape is f***ed up. After an hour of mining, Medio reached level 15, allowing him to mine the iron ore himself. With the materials in hand, he made his way back to Doric's hut, where he learned that Doric is one of the only entities in-game that can actually make pickaxes. He uses this seed of power to supply the dwarven mine with a monopoly position. Why he lives in a small 4x4 apartment with an unventilated smithy is beyond me. This motherfucker should be making bank. Completion of this quest gives 1 quest point, a bit of mining XP, some coins, and the privilege of using Doric's anvils. But the real treasure is what's beyond the gates to the west of Doric's place. And as soon as I figure out my mom's credit card number, we'll discover what's beyond them. X marks the spot is a new free-to-play quest that serves as an introduction to clue scrolls, the continent of Great Corinth, and possibly the underground narcotics trade of RuneScape. This quest quest can be started by speaking with Veos in Lumbridge. Originally from Great Courant, Veos made his way here for a treasure hunt. All he has for this is a cryptid clue scroll. Since he's not from the area, he can't make heads nor tails of the clue scroll and asks us to assist. Once accepted, Veos gives Medio the clue scroll. It seems that Veos got stuck because he couldn't find Bob. Had Veos known anything about village life, he'd have known he could have literally asked anybody about him. Village people love to gossip, especially those mean old bitches at the grocery store. This way, Veos would have learned that Bob runs one of 2 stores in Lumbridge, loves a stiff drink, and runs a controversial internship program. The first step is completed just a few steps outside Bob's store. The next clue was a map that looks a bit like the frog from Undertale. It was here that Medio encountered a strange device that was cold to the touch, but became more heated as he moved closer to the Draenor jail, where his next step could be completed. To the untrained eye, his last clue probably looked like gibberish. But because of Medio's superior intellect, he immediately realized, without the help from guides, that this is in fact a Caesar shift. In this particular case, every letter moves 1 step down the alphabet. Becomes Draenor Big Bang. This is where the treasure hunt comes to an end. When returning the treasure to Veos, Medio is curious about its contents. According to Veos, this is nothing to concern himself with, leading Medio to believe that he accidentally got involved with the Great Courant's cartel. Turns out, he never needed the help to begin with. Veos just lets you do all the digging to avoid suspicion of the customs officers. Completion of this quest awards 1 quest point, 200 coins, an XP lamp, a beginner's clue scroll, and the ability to receive clue scroll boxes, which only becomes worthwhile if you are a member. Hello ladies and gentlemen, today it's my greatest pleasure to take you through the best free-to-play quest in RuneScape. The Knight's Sword is the story of a squire who loses the sword of his master, but the real star of the show is Thurgo. Let's get into it. Medio had found his way to Falador's castle courtyard. This castle is the home of the Order of the White Knights, the de facto rulers of Falador. The monarch of the Asgarnia region is called King Valens, but he's old as and he doesn't appear in the game, so ruling falls to the White Knight Order. White Knights are allowed to have a squire, and we can meet such an individual in the courtyard. When asked who he serves, he states that he's loyal to surviving. I guess we all are in a way. This squire is in a predicament as he lost a precious sword of surviving. This particular sword is a family heirloom that has been in the family for 5 generations. Originally crafted by the Imp dwarves, who are just as good at smithing as they are at going extinct. If there's one person who ought to know more, it would be Raldo the Librarian, who can be found in Varrock. Medio, who was still absolutely buzzing from finding a beekeeper's hat, promises to help the squire get a replacement sword, not heeding the warnings that the recommended combat level for this quest is 20. So Medio makes his way to Varrock and speaks to Raldo, who shares the fate of the Imp dwarves. Yeah, the barbarians came and them up. But all hope is not lost, as Raldo states that a few survivors escaped to the south of Asgarnia, and when not dealing with the consequences of a genocide, they've been known to enjoy a good red berry pie. Medio, who was still awaiting his passport, was not allowed to make moves on the stock market, and thus had to arrange a red berry pie by himself. He made his way to Lumbridge to ask for cooking advice from the best and only cook he knew. It was here that he learned that the cooking range in Lumbridge Castle was supposedly powered by magic to make food burn less. He chose not to believe it. After getting some locally sourced premium beef, Medio reached level 10 in cooking, which allowed him to try his hand at red berry pie. He failed immediately. Burning your first red berry pie is a rite of passage for every new account though, so don't even think I didn't bring extra ingredients. With a fresh red berry pie in hand, Medio traveled to the south of Asgarnia, where he met Thurgo, one of the last surviving members of the Imp dwarves, and a master blacksmith to boot. Medio loved his cape and asked him how he got it, so Thurgo is like,
Ah yes, I am a master blacksmith of course. I got that from my dwarven ancestors, the great Imp dwarves.
oh, so you're an Imp dwarf.
Man, F you, I don't want to talk about that.
But after giving him a red berry pie, he'll do whatever we ask of him. If we want him to smith a replica of the Night Sword, however, he'll need a visual representation. So Medio travels back to Falador to steal a picture of Surviving Sword. But it's of the utmost importance that he doesn't suspect anything. I'd say we absolutely nailed it. When Thurgo sees the picture, he tells Medio that he'll need 2 iron bars and blue-eyed ore. The iron bar was a pickle. The stock market was still not in Medio's reach, and making it himself was so far beyond his skill level, it was out of the question. The only thing left for him to do was to travel to Deep Wilderness. Arguably the most dangerous place in the free-to-play world, where physical safety was as fleeting as the laws that protected mankind. Medio had heard about this place before. Promises of riches lured desperate people in, only to be never heard from again. He'd never guessed that he would be one of them. Medio pushed through the smell of death and the darkness of the leafless trees to find an iron bar that sporadically popped into existence. He was then mauled by a bear. Now for the blue-eyed ore. Just beyond the tropical scenery of Thurgo's hut lies an icy dungeon for some reason. Deep within the cold confines of this cave, blue-eyed ore can be mined by those brave enough to run past frozen warriors. This place was dangerous, and Medio regretted not heeding the mysterious warning of getting level 20 combat prior to this adventure. He then found that the icy creatures were bound by a code of honor to not attack anyone standing on this square. So it was all good. When returning the materials to Thurgo, he'll craft a blue-eyed sword, which is convincing enough for Surviving to not notice anything. I guess the moral of this story is to never own up to any mistake you make, as long as you can weasel your way out of it. Even though Thurgo did all the hard work, Medio was awarded with a metric fuck-ton of smithing experience. Not only that, Medio brought enough materials for a second blue-eyed sword, which was a lot better than his current training weapon. I guess you could say that this sword changes everything. And that's gonna do it for the Night Sword. We've uncovered the existence of a dwarven race long thought extinct. But maybe more importantly, Thurgo dethrones Hedy the Witch for thickest NPC we've met thus far. Goblin Diplomacy is not only a reference to the ongoing Blood vs. Cribs gang war, it also serves as a deep dive into human psychology. This quest begins in the Goblin Village, northwest of Falador. Goblins are small, green humanoids. What they lack in strength and intelligence, they more than make up for in numbers. That's right, these guys they worship the god Bandos, who essentially runs a violent cult of warfare. Talking to General Bandnose and Wardface reveals that their tribe is on the brink of a civil war, as they cannot decide on a new color for their armor, and the traditional brown coating has gotten stale. Bandnose favors the color red, while Wardface opts for green. If this is not diplomatically solved soon, the tribe faces total collapse. Now I can hear you ask, would sentient beings really go to war for something as trivial as color? I'd invite you to remember the turf wars that started when Pokemon Go was released in the summer of 2016. Medio is asked to help settle this conflict. What if he could dye the armor in another color? Reluctantly, the generals agree and tell Medio that there might be some spare goblin meal lying around the village. The rampage Medio had gone on earlier for the armor was apparently for nothing. With the armor in hand, Medio set out to acquire the dyes. For this, he needed some onions, woad leaves and red berries. The mention of red berries made his thoughts drift off to more pleasant things than stinky goblins. And it's exactly for this thick friend, Medio always made sure to stock up his bank with enough red berries. Onions were simple. Farmer Fred hadn't let him down yet when it came to the bulb vegetables. Woad leaves could be purchased from Wyson, the gardener in Falador Park.
Hey, haven't I seen you around my park before?
No. Offering 20 coins will result in Wyson giving the player 2 woad leaves. These ingredients can be brought to Aggie the Witch in Drain Village, where you can insult her for no other reason than it being hilarious. This somehow upsets her, and she'll do a so-called magic trick to take some of your coins. With some money left, you can quite cheaply get Aggie to make you some dice, provided you bring her the materials. These same dice go for a lot more on the Grand Exchange marketplace. It was at this moment that diplomacy and world peace became an afterthought, as Medio was seduced by promises of riches. Before proceeding with the quest, Medio put all of his savings into woad leaves and blue dice, which he sold against an insane margin to people too lazy to make it themselves. Though he knew better than to flaunt his newfound wealth, there were signs. With these dice and goblin armor in tow, he returned to the generals, who were anxiously awaiting an update. Medio lets them try the blue and orange armor, which they both reject. They decide after a long discussion that the original brown armor is the best after all. Sometimes people don't actually want to change. Sometimes they just want to bitch and moan about the status quo, making all the legwork Medio had to do worthless. He was pissed. Though a civil war was prevented, they still lost quite a few numbers to this endeavor. Prince Ali Rescue is a tale about international intrigue, enabling alcoholism, and cross-dressing. This quest begins in the desert town of Al-Kharid, located 5 meters away from rural England for some reason. You can only gain access to this desert town if you dish out 10 gold coins. This is why the palace in Al-Kharid looks the way it does. These motherfuckers are making bank. Speaking to Chancellor Hassan reveals that Al-Kharid's prince has been kidnapped. This had upset the Emir so much that he is now hiding in his chambers. This marks the second region where its leader doesn't appear in game.
Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Hassan tasks us with freeing Prince Ali from captivity. That won't be easy though, as the prince is being held captive in the Draenor village jail. A ruthless band of hired killers, under the command of Lady Kelly, are awaiting ransom from the Emir for the safe return of his son. You might remember the gang from that one time you were minding your own goddamn business and they attacked you out of nowhere. Negotiating with terrorists is not the style of the Al-Kharidians. Instead, they'll rely on their spy mastery and subterfuge to get their prince back. To this end, Medio is sent to parley with head spy master Osman. To free Prince Ali, they need a replica of the key that Kelly has on her person at all times. Since Kelly is the only one with free reign of the jail, they would also need a way to make Ali look like her. Killing any one of Kelly's gang may result in the prince's life being endangered, so Medio's default course of action was off limits. Osman sends Medio on his way to his daughter Lila. She'll help carry out the plan. But before doing so, Medio still had to pay toll for the gate. Speaking to Lila reveals that we need a pink skirt, a blonde wig and some skin paste, as Ali had suffered a black eye while he was captured. I could have sworn that the reason for the skin paste was different in the past. Aggie the Witch could supply the skin paste as long as we gave her some ingredients, including a red berry. This was not a problem as Medio kept a steady supply on hand at all times. What's up, Thergo? You wanna earn a red berry?
I've done a lot more for a lot less.
An old sailor by the name of Ned now makes his living weaving rope, but he's actually quite a competent producer of wigs. The pink skirt was already in Medio's possession, a matter I won't elaborate upon further. It was now time to infiltrate the jail. Glazing Lady Kelly will persuade her into showing us her key. We can then use some soft clay to get an exact inlay for the replica. Osman can then use that to manufacture a key that will free the prince. Then there was the matter of Joel, the prison guard, a strong but gentleman with a fondness for beer. If you give him 3 units, he'll be too drunk to do his job. This is the second time we enabled alcoholism in these quests, and from now on, I'll track anytime it happens. Of course, Medio had those drinks already on hand. Let's just say he was not in the habit of buying his own drinks, if you catch my drift. Lady Kelly, having now outlived her usefulness, was tied up by Medio and left in a closet. She disappears from the game after this, and since there are no other witnesses than Joe, who is drunk off his ass, the only logical conclusion remaining is that this closet would also serve as her coffin. Nothing was stopping Medio from freeing Prince Ali, so he gave him the wig, skirt and the skin paste for his black eye. Ali tries on the female outfit and he is like,
This better not awaken anything in me.
By the power of cross-dressing, Prince Ali makes it back safely to Al-Kharid. This awards Medio with 3 quest points, $700 and exemption of having to pay toll for the gate. Upon investigation, it's revealed that the toll is used to fund the town, which includes a kebab shop. So I don't know if this is a good thing or not. Misthalin Mystery is the story of a mystery that takes place in Misthalin. This quest can be started by speaking to Abigail and Huey in Lumbridge Swamp. Huey is busy bleeding out from stab wounds he acquired earlier. Him and Abigail were at a party at an abandoned mansion when a masked assailant attacked them and their friends. They ask Medio to investigate. So Medio, using his superior core strength to row to the creepy island, finds himself at the foot of the mansion, but the front door is locked. All that's left to do is investigate the outside area, but he can't escape the feeling he's being watched. It is here that the killer makes his first victim, as they stab an individual named Sid to death. He takes a while to die though. This is just one of the many instances where Jagex shows their blatant disregard for human life. The key to the front door is dropped in the rain barrel, and this gives us our in. While exploring the mansion, Medio comes across a young woman in a reading room. Suddenly, the killer comes out of the closet and starts absolutely slaying. He also makes his second victim. When Medio comes across an improvised explosive device, he immediately tries to light it on fire because that seemed like the best option for content. But the fuse was too damp. Though it shouldn't make a difference, lighting the candles allowed the bomb to be lit. Medio remarks that he only has a few seconds to move himself to safety. I decided on a different approach. Outside, Medio witnesses the killer make their third victim, and this is because they failed to answer a riddle correctly. I also fell for this, by the way. Before racing out of the scene, the killer leaves a note. The answer to this riddle can be found in the piano. Since the killer wants us DAED, that's also the sequence of the notes we have to play. I am actually somewhat of a master musician in real life, so I stuck around to play some classics. In the kitchen, Medio witnesses the fourth victim, Mandy, being stalked. She is a white person in a horror setting, however, so she leaves the Bandos God sword on display. When the killer strikes once more, he leaves Medio his final note, which leaves him puzzled. What the hell is Heart H? On searching the hearth, Medio comes across a puzzle that awards him with yet another key. What follows is an epic showdown between him and the killer, where only tick-perfect PvM tactics will result in his victory. When Medio comes out on top, it's revealed that the killers are actually Abigail and Huey, the ones that put us on this path in the first place. Abigail reveals she is an underappreciated theater kid, tired of having to share the spotlight with heroic adventurers such as ourselves. It's worth noting that so far, the most adventure we've had is smuggling narcotics, the murder of an innocent gardener, and the shearing of sheep. Track record like that, I'd rather keep out of the spotlight. Huey and Abigail get into an argument because Abigail became the very thing she swore to destroy, and steals the limelight away from Huey. In response, Abigail shanks him, leaving her so distraught she leaves herself vulnerable to getting DDS specced in the back. Trying to leave the insanity behind him, Medio makes his way back to the boat, but before he can do that, a still alive Abigail tries to murder him. At this point, Mandy, who actually survived, one-taps Abigail to hell with the Bandos God sword in hand. From this, we can infer that this girl has at least 75 attack. Grateful for our help, Mandy rewards us with 1 quest point, 600 crafting experience, and an uncut ruby, emerald and sapphire, amounting to almost 2000 in cash. Nice! Mandy keeps the Bandos God sword, however, which is valued at around 70 million at the time of writing. Maybe the real Misthalin mystery that remains yet unsolved is why Mandy is such a stingy bitch. Shield of Arrav is one of the few quests that requires the input of another player, forcing you to confront your biggest enemy as an OSRS player, social anxiety. Many years ago, a hero by the name of Arrav proved instrumental in the defense of Iraq against the Nekmasur Zamarigal. This evil wizard is part of the Majara, an ancient race of skeletal mages hellbent on the destruction of the world. This is a whole can of worms that can only be opened in a member's world though. Arrav himself was a skilled warrior who was so swole that he did not even need body armor. His shield alone was enough to ensure survival. When he died, that same legendary shield was put on display in the Varrock Museum for years, only to be stolen later by the infamous Phoenix Gang. The then ruling king promised 1200 gold pieces for its safe return. The bounty still stands to this day. Medio, unsuccessful in a multitude of pickpocket attempts for his mom's credit card, pursued the bounty in hopes of getting a bond. To this end, he had found himself in the Varrock library, where his friend Reldo helps Medio find a book for the Shield of Arrav. And it basically explains all we've went over already. Reldo adds that a part of the Phoenix Gang has split into a new crime syndicate, masquerading under the name the Black Arms Gang. Rumor has it that after they had a falling out, they split the shield in two, kinda like Solomon's baby. Both gangs have their half under lock and key in their gang hideout, so to retrieve the full shield, both gangs have to be joined. But they beefing like crazy, so joining one gang means forsaking the other. This is where the help of a second player is needed, as one player infiltrates the Phoenix Gang and the other joins the Black Arms. Medio decided to join the Phoenix Gang, but this was hard because Straven, the recruiter, talked in code to avoid conspicuousness. Unbeknownst to himself, Medio was on the spectrum and did not really understand the metaphor. So when not tasked with staging an accident for a pirate mass murderer, he chose to engage in a friendly dialogue. But he was rude as fuck, so Medio killed him anyway. This got Medio into the Phoenix Gang, where he could find a weapon room key and one half of the legendary shield. Now for the hardest part. Summoning all his courage, Medio reached out in the Shield of Arrav clan chat and found a co-conspirator. It was up to them to take Medio's key, grab 2 Phoenix crossbows from storage and return unscathed to the Black Arms Gang. It's here that the second half of the shield can be found. Medio then collected the bounty from King Roald, Mistalin's current monarch, and the successor of the king who had set the bounty all those years ago. The reward had not been adjusted for inflation, so membership was still a distant prospect. Vampyre Slayer is one of those heroic quests where you bring justice to a classic evildoer. That's because Count Raynor, unbeknownst to everyone, is actually a landlord, and we're gonna stop him. This adventure can be started by talking to Morgan in Draenor Village. He implores the player character for help with Count Raynor, a ruthless vampire that has made the village its victim, terrorizing the local townfolk from the confines of Draenor Manor. After some persuasion, Medio agrees to end this reign of terror. Morgan deduces that Medio's current max bench probably won't hit double digits, so he sends Medio to Varrock to parley with an old friend of his, the damaged Dr. Harlow. He can be found drinking his cares away at the Blue Moon Inn. Superstitious at the best of times, Morgan doesn't have much. But what he'll always have is a seemingly infinite supply of garlic to stave off the vampire threat. When he was accosted by a woman speaking in modern slang though, Medio killed her for breaking his immersion. This type of language had no place in our medieval clicking simulator. Isn't that right, homies? Medio then found his way to Varrock, where he met the infamous Dr. Harlow. He had fallen victim to a curse that had claimed so many others, as he was now reduced to being a raging, unintelligible alcoholic. Dr. Harlow will only teach us how to deal with the vampire if we buy him a drink, which means another notch on the count of enabling alcoholism. Talk of fighting these foul creatures seemed to have a sobering effect on the damaged doctor. That's cause the only thing stronger than the effects of alcohol is post-traumatic stress disorder. Harlow states that 4 things are needed to permanently kill a vampire: garlic to weaken them, a stake to pierce their heart, a hammer to drive the stake, and humongous balls of steel. Before traveling back to Draenor Village, Medio had a conversation with the cook in the Blue Moon Inn, who told him that RuneScape is actually a computer game. Medio then found himself wishing the cook had an attack option for breaking his immersion. With the garlic, hammer, stake, and balls, Medio found his way once more to Draenor Manor. He put on his best armor, took a deep breath, and ventured into the basement. Though the garlic weakened the monster, he was still a formidable foe. Luckily, Medio had an inventory full of fish, which seemed to have a regenerative effect on the deep wounds he sustained while fighting. In the end, Medio plunged the stake into the black heart of the vampire and hammered him all the way back to hell. Though the fall of Count Draenor spelled good news for Draenor Village, there were some unforeseen consequences to the Count's tenants.
We're gonna be homeless, Morty.
Since you get to take revenge on the dark wizards that killed you that one time you tried to enter Varrock 20 years ago, Demon Slayer is one of the most gratifying quests that free-to-play RuneScape has to offer. It's also a bit sexier than I remember. This adventure is started by talking to Aris, who goes by a different name ever since 2020. For 1 gold coin, Aris can predict our future. Why she is sitting around in a tent charging pennies for this is beyond me. She claims to have an unnaturally long lifespan, but never used that time to understand basic economics. What she sees in our future is highly disturbing. And she also sees that Belrith the demon will return to destroy Varrock. What's more, it's our destiny to put a stop to this. A woman with great historic knowledge, Aris knows that Belrith was defeated by a great hero wielding the legendary sword Silverlight. His name was Wally, or Waldo if you're from North America. Silverlight now resides in Varrock Castle, safely under lock and key under guard of surprising. To make sure Silverlight doesn't fall into the wrong hands, 3 keys are needed to open its storage. 1 key is in the hands of surprising, another is possessed by the captain of Varrock's guard, and the last is cared for by a demented wizard. Surprising, not the sharpest tool in the shed, has dropped his key in the drain, which can be collected without any real problems most of the time. Captain Rovin can be convinced to give up the key on the one condition that it won't be surprising who makes the kill, as the captain knows what an idiot he is, and the last thing he needs is an ego boost that comes from external validation. Also unrelated, if you're liking the video, why not subscribe to the channel? The last key is deep within the confines of the Wizard's Tower. Wizard Treyborn has banished the key to the Shadow Realm. After he calls you a few slurs, he'll be happy to retrieve the key on condition that you bring him 25 sets of bones. What's f***ed up is that this is not even the weirdest request we've had during our adventure thus far. With the last key in hand, we can finally see Silverlight and take the fight to Delrith, who is certainly dressed for the occasion, if the occasion was being the main dom in a BDSM orgy. Before we set out, we must learn the incantation that Wally/Waldo used to seal Delrith away in another dimension. I have a photographic memory, so this wasn't a problem. When Delrith is weakened enough, it's time to send him back to hell, which leads to the epic conclusion where you realize that this entire quest is actually a Tenacious D reference. Below Ice Mountain has the best quest reward, the visual of another Incando dwarf. But first, we got some work to do. This quest can be started by talking with Willow. She claims to be an archaeologist trying to pry open a set of ancient doors leading into the base of Ice Mountain. To do this, she needs to reunite her former group of archaeologists. They consist of a swole powerlifter, an unfortunate dwarf, and a homeless person. Medio lacked the intelligence to question if this group really were archaeologists. The first member of the gang of excavators was Jekyll, the bodybuilder. He and Willow had a falling out over archaeology adjacent stuff, I guess, and would never ever work together again, unless Medio would engage in heavy barbarian training. Despite his strength level barely hitting double digits, he passed with flying colors. The next individual on the list is Marley the Thief, a nickname he probably earned after snagging too many hors d'oeuvres at the archaeologist's faculty meeting. Marley was in a bitch fight with Willow and would never ever work with her again, unless Medio would bring in one of the finest delicacies in the land, unseasoned beef on bread. This is because RuneScape is based on England, so Medio prepares a dish that would make Gordon Ramsay hang himself and Marley joins the team. The last person of interest was an alcoholic dwarven demolition expert by the name of Burntoff. Why are you called Burntoff?
Laddie, can you see this huge bulge in my pants?
No? Exactly. Since he and Willow were beefing like crazy, the only way he'll join the excavation is if we buy him a drink. and if we can beat him in a best of 3 in rock paper scissors. Pretty hard when technically neither of you has fingers. So the ragtag group of archaeologists is now reunited for one final score. Arthur. Burntoff blows up the doors, Jackal clears the debris, and Marley checks for any traps. When Medio enters the room, Willow reveals they're not archaeologists at all, but actually grave robbers looking for ancient loot. Medio is shocked to his very core at this revelation. Burntoff, who is a demolitions expert and not a safety official, accidentally sets off another explosive, and this invites an ancient guardian to join the fray. The thieves run for their lives, and Medio is left to neutralize the threat. Upon doing so, he learns that this golem is actually a safety measure, dissuading anyone from entering the ancient ruins of Camdozal. An Imcamdo dwarf by the name of Romarno and distant relative of Thurgo has made these ruins his home after being one of the few surviving Imcamdos. He is not as thick as Thurgo though, so he can get Black Knight's Fortress is an exciting quest that has the player infiltrate a remote castle full of men, which is located next to a remote monastery full of men. Tensions must have been crazy. This quest is started by talking with Ceramic Vase. He states that he needs someone to infiltrate the Black Knight's Fortress. After Medio proves he has the right skills and temperament for the job, he asks for some details. Most notably, why the White Knights cannot do this themselves. The answer is that espionage falls under the responsibilities of the Temple Knights. When inquiring what the Temple Knights are, Ceramic retorts that he is forbidden from sharing this, which leaves me to ask, why bring this up in the first place? Anyway, the Black Knights are a faction of knights constantly beefing with the White Knights. Because even in Asgarnia, a block makes a difference. If they don't pay them a large sum of money, they'll unleash their new secret weapon against them. It's our job to infiltrate the fortress just beyond Ice Mountain and sabotage whatever their new weapon is. So Medio sets off to Ice Mountain and finds that he can only enter this fortress if he has the attire of a Black Knight. This was basically best in slot at this point. Skillfully and bravely making his way inside, Medio catches wind of the plan. This consists of a witch putting the entire force of the Black Knights on Tran. This genius endeavor has taken her 5 years to complete, and the last piece of the puzzle is a cabbage that is grown on the soil of Draenor Manor. These vegetables have a magical edge on them, giving 1 additional defense level. Those White Knights are not gonna know what hit him. Graldo the Goblin and the witch's manservant is sent to fetch it and told that any other cabbage would totally wreck the steroid soup. Being a thoroughbred country boy, Medio never left home without a stack of coleslaw, a habit that will prove fruitful on this day. In the confines of the Dark Castle, Medio gets wind of a secret meeting. The Black Knights are so secretive, however, they'd kill anyone on site who interfered. They were right to be so paranoid, as this meeting room leads straight to the attic above the steroid soup, which we can now sabotage with the cabbage we had on hand. This ends about as well as one might suspect, but one little nugget of lore you might have missed pertains to the witch's black cat. This is the only cat in game that cannot be understood, even with the power of the cat speak amulet. Anyway, Medio returns victoriously to the White Knight's castle. The Black Knights already caught off their attack, and since Medio is motivated only by avarice, he insists that the White Knights owe him some lettuce. Get it? He's awarded with 2,500 coins. Now back in 2001, this was absolute bank. Today, it doesn't even make a dent towards a bond. Membership would have to wait. The Corsair Curse is a story about pirates, betrayal, and I'm guessing quite a bit of steroids. Let's get started. This adventure is started by talking to Captain Talk, the self-proclaimed Corsair captain. His crew is being plagued by a curse, which makes them all fall ill, and it's up to the player to help them. When we agree to this, I'm pretty sure Mr. Talk comes onto you. An exciting prospect, as Talk is the proud owner of his very own ship, which blows ours right out of the water. water. 4 crewmates have fallen victim to the curse, as we'll find out when we actually sail to the Corsair Cove. Technically, this location is part of the free-to-play experience, and might just be the weirdest place to house anything free-to-play related, but that's another discussion. Cabin boy Colin, using a telescope to get a lay of the sea, spots a triple C thick mermaid, and because he spent a few months in a crew full of men, has a hard time conducting himself in a gentlemanly manner. Another crewmate by the name of Ithoi explains that bad things happen to young lads who get involved with mermaids. Thus, Colin is convinced that this is the cause of the curse. Arson believes himself to be responsible, as he was investigating some caves inhabited by ogres. Upon being spotted, he fled the cave. A thief by nature, Arson couldn't bear to leave empty-handed, and yoinked a sacred artifact from the ogres. He thinks that he was cursed in retaliation. When getting Noki the cook's side of the story, he will tell you of his voyage on the beach, where he dug up a demon that cursed them all afterwards. His recollection is actually kinda scary. Ithoi the Navigator tells us that any number of things might have caused the curse. He also alludes to the fact that spending your formative years on sea might not be the most beneficial from a developmental standpoint. So, our best bet is to investigate all the leads we have so far, starting with Cabin Boy Colin. When we retrace his steps, we can actually find the triple C thick mermaid and gather that it's actually just a triple C thick ogre child. I have notified the authorities and Colin will have his day in court. When looking into Noki's story, we can find that the curse demon he so scaredly spoke of is actually just a clockwork doll, unable to bestow curses on anything or anyone. The last lead is Arson the Thief. To reconcile with the ogres, Medio returns the artifact to its rightful owners. And with that, with just 2 more free-to-play quests to go, the ogre chief task dethrones Sturgo at the last possible second. Less importantly, the ogre artifact is actually a toothpick, and they didn't care at all that it was stolen. The curse was not their doing. Having exhausted all options, Medio returns to Captain Tuck, where they surmise that the only person's story who doesn't add up is Ithoi's. Upon investigation, it appears that the curse started after everyone had eaten, but Noki didn't cook that night, as he was still shitting out his skeleton from encountering the demon doll. Moreover, since the crew has settled on the Corsair Cove, a navigator is the last thing this crew needs, and Arson tells Medio that Ithoi might be replaced because of this. When getting Ithoi's side of the story, he doesn't take too kindly to the accusation, and he states that we'll never be able to prove that he's faking his sickness, as he won't get up to move. In response, we burn his house to the ground. It's at this point we can prove that even though Ithoi skipped dinner, he's still full of shit. When bringing this information to Captain Tuck, he tasks us with killing Ithoi. Captain Tuck won't take no for an answer. Ithoi is a formidable foe, using so many forms of elemental magic that he put the Avatar to shame. When we finally best him in single combat, we get awarded with 2 quest points and access to the only bank in the free-to-play world that has a tropical setting. In my estimation, the taking of a human life is a small price to pay for a reward this great. Completing Dragon Slayer is the ultimate goal of any free-to-play player that is not on the spectrum. This quest can be started at the Champions Guild, a prestigious order of heroes that can only be joined once you've acquired at least 32 quest points. But we've come a long way, you and I, haven't we? When Medio asked for a quest, the Guildmaster promises a daring escapade, where, at the end of it, we'll be awarded the privilege of wearing the highly sought-after Rune Plate Body. Donning this suit of armor without completing this quest first is strictly forbidden. I never understood how they would realistically enforce this, though, but they do. And if we want to be part of the cool kids wearing a Rune Plate Body, we'll have to set off to adventure. Our first stop is Oziak, the main gatekeeper of the armor. Not planning to give away the privilege all willy-nilly, he tasks Medio with the impossible, slaying the Dragon of Grandor. Not only does he hide how dangerous this undertaking is, he is also unwilling to share any information that will increase our chances of success. How many adventurers looking to prove themselves Had this dummy thick devil sent to an untimely grave? Medio would never know. So, in search of information, Medio returns to the Guildmaster. What happens next will shock you. 30 years ago, Crandor was a thriving island inhabited by wise mages and daring adventurers. One of these adventurers was so daring, he ventured into the depths of the island and inadvertently woke Elvark the dragon. Though the adventurer fought valiantly, Elvark escaped and burned Crandor to the ground. People desperately tried to escape, but the scaly beast wouldn't let up. Crandor would join the annals of history. Legend has it that Elvark is still underneath the now desolated island, waiting for her match. This was not the end of the Crandorians entirely though. 3 wizards managed to escape the island using powerful teleportation magic. Vowing to keep Elvark locked up, they destroyed all but one map to Crandor, each keeping a piece of the last map on their person. Malzahar has locked himself in a maze, but the Guildmaster is kind enough to give us a key for us to try and solve it. Lozar lives across the river from Lumbridge, and her house is actually that one destroyed rune where all goblins flock together. Those same goblins sadly killed Lozar, and seeing as the goblins are level 5 and the area is single combat, we can confidently say that canonically, Lozar was a noob. Thalzar, the last wizard, was paranoid as fuck and never told anyone where his piece was, taking its secrets to the grave. Luckily, we can consult with an all-knowing oracle who we will never ask for help again after this quest. So assembling this map is gonna be quite tedious. You might be asking, why not just go to Crandor without a map? That's because it can only be reached by sea, and the area surrounding it is notoriously treacherous. To safely navigate there, we need a ship that can safely traverse its treacherous reefs. I'm Dutch, so sailing is part of my culture, for better or worse. And even I couldn't cut it. Godverdomme, mijn boot! Lastly, if we're squaring up against the dragon, we're going to need protection. All we can do is persuade the Duke of Lumbridge to give us an anti-dragon shield. So we need a map lost to time, a ship and crew that can withstand the Crandorian terrain, and lastly, a family heirloom of the Duke of Lumbridge. Thalzar's map piece is first. As the Oracle was pretty close to the Champions Guild, she tells Medio that the map piece is actually beneath them, but to open the door, 4 items are needed. Rather than telling us straight up, she prefers to disguise the answer in a riddle that looks like it's written by a 4th grader. I can't think of a good lore reason why she would do this. Through sheer serendipity, Medio already had these items on hand. The door opened, and an eerie message tried to dissuade Medio from his undertaking. It might have made an impression if he had the capacity to read. Next up was the map piece of Lozar the Loser. Medio set off to the Goblin village, as he knew that the local population feared him enough to tell him what he wanted to know. General Bentnose recalls that Warmbrain has the map piece, but his life of crime has rewarded him with jail time in Port Sarim. This means that law enforcement is canon in RuneScape. But strangely enough, the player character can get away with crimes that spit in the very face of the Geneva suggestions. Medio would have pondered if this lack of policing was due to indifference or incompetence, but he had a map piece to acquire, so we're off to the happiest place on earth. Warmbrain, trapped behind bars, is willing to part with the map piece for a small fee of 100 Benjis. This was a little too rich for Medio's blood, so he thought to kill him. This presented an obstacle, as the only way to obtain a drop that is out of reach is by casting the spell Telekinetic Grab, which requires a magic level of 33, a level Medio didn't have. Yet. Yo, what up guys, welcome back to Magic with Medio. For my next trick I will make the contents of this syringe disappear into my arm. Back at the prison, after killing a defenseless Warmbrain, the second piece was now in Medio's possession. Just around the corner, to the north of Rimington, was Malzar's maze. When Crandor crumbled, so did Malzar's mind, and he has locked himself and the map piece in an elaborate maze. When we finally find him, we can see that he is a shell of the once great wizard, having traded his magic skills for blatant food fetishism. After solving Malzar's maze, we can assemble the map to Crandor. Now it was time to acquire a ship. And not just any ship. One of the last ships designed to withstand the rough terrain of Crandor is Lady Lumbridge. It can be bought for 2000 coins in Port Sarim. This is about 100 times less than I paid for my skiff last week. And the skiff did not even come with a free slave. Inflation be crazy, that's all I'm saying. It's a bit of a fixer-upper too, so before she's seaworthy, we'll have to make some repairs. It was also never intended for us to sail the ship ourselves, so we have to recruit a captain. Ned, who helped us during Prince Ali rescue, dreamed of taking to the seas once more, but is now so old that no one would take a chance on him, except for a mentally deranged adventurer dead set on traveling to Crandor. Ned would sail anywhere if it meant he got to do it again, even into the bowels of hell. Before we go any further, it's imperative that we have something to protect ourselves from the Dragonfire. To this end, we travel to Duke Horatio of Lumbridge. Once Medio shares that it's actually Alvark he plans to kill, the Duke is immediately on board, because he remembered the day Crandor burned like it was yesterday. He pleads that if we even are able to kill Alvark, we'll have to make sure that it's really dead. We had the map, the ship and the protection. It was now do or die. Ned skillfully sails Medio to Crandor, but before they arrive, Alvark herself attacks, which is animated like this. Unfortunately, this attack would mean the untimely demise of our Cabin Boy Jenkins. Though, as we know from the Restless Ghost, people do not leave this world behind when they still have something left to accomplish. Medio doubted that he had seen the last of him. By some miracle, Medio washes up on the shores of Crandor. He then questioned exactly how this island once hosted a thriving community, but then put his mind towards something more important: the slaying of Alvark. Alvark hit like a truck though, and Medio had to back out. It is then we learn that even though Cabin Boy Jenkins didn't survive the first track, Ned's optimism for sailing still hadn't wavered, and he can make the trip as many times as we like. This time though, no messing around. Medio studied up on the behavior of dragons and their attack patterns, hoping to find a weakness somewhere, anywhere. He knew he needed it. Still, Alvark attacked with the same intensity as she had all those years ago, and Medio felt his life force slipping away. It was then that the guy who sold him some smelly beads during Imp Catcher showed up. He was on a leisurely stroll through the volcano and by chance had an inventory full of food that Medio could take. That was super lucky and serendipitous. This meal was enough to rejuvenate Medio, and he finally bested Alvark, making sure to keep the promise he made to the Duke of Lumbridge. Medio, reigning victorious over Alvark, returned to Oziak. Oziak couldn't believe his eyeballs when he saw Alvark's head strewn over his stable and apologized for underestimating his new friend. That same friend was now allowed to purchase the legendary Rune Play body. He noped out of there when he saw that Oziak charged 85,000 for said play body. So ends the story of Dragon Slayer. I thought it was okay, but it still blatantly rips off a lot of story beats from Skyrim. So, that's all free-to-play quests completed. But what is next for MedioLore? I'll tell you. While celebrating Christmas, he waited for his mom to get turned on some eggnog and stole her credit card while everyone was arguing over politics. It was time. Medio made his way to the Taverley Gate, opened it for the first time, and stepped into the great unknown. What would happen next was anyone's guess, but I would probably say like some Wintertot and the Witch's House first. We'll see.